My name is Jay, and this is my analysis of the Kite Runner. The amazing truth, the truth about the amazing book, The Kite Runner. The Kite Runner in one page. The Kite Runner is an intriguing and hopeful novel with heavy points around ideas circulated around aspects of life that affect many on a day-to-day basis. Instances such as power versus powerless, rich versus poor, redemption, and hope swirl around the overall premise of the book. The book details events through Amir's point of view, briefly switching to other peoples throughout the story. Amir is born into wealth and has favorable position in Afghan culture. He also has a friend who was later found out to be his half-brother named Hassan. Amir treats Hassan as a friend for a duration of the book before eventually betraying him multiple times. This eventually leads to Amir feeling guilt and seeking redemption. The imagery in the book is heavily present on page 247 when talking about Asef and Amir's fight. The imagery in this scene where Asef beats down is not only used to give detail to the punishment that Amir has sought since Hassan's rape, which he watched and did not help intervene with, but also shows a bit of comparison to the ferocity and viciousness of the Taliban to people like Hassan. The Taliban are just as brutal as the scene. Foreshadowing is also heavily mentioned in the book. On page 64, before Hassan's rape, the author Khalid, sorry I forgot his name, the author Khalid uses the literary device of foreshadowing when he used it to display the pure-hearted Hassan being used as a sacrifice in the story. In the Bible, lambs were viewed as pure and often used as a sacrifice, just as Hassan was. On page 247, during Asef and Amir's fight, irony was also heavily present. The author Khalid showcased the irony in this scene by having Sorab shooting out Asef's eye. Hassan, when he was younger, threatened to shoot Asef in the eye when he was talking to Amir. Therefore, Sorab fulfills Hassan's wishes all these years later when he actually does, while protecting Amir, which would be something that Hassan would be interested in because he stayed loyal to the very end. He never switched up on him. Symbolism was used in the pomegranate tree scene on chapter A on page 77. The authors showcased the symbolism in the scene by using the tree as a symbol for Amir and Hassan's friendship. The tree does eventually die after their quote-unquote fight they had on the top of the hill by the cemetery. But pomegranates have a lasting stain to them, just like the certain actions of people. So when Amir was throwing the pomegranates at Hassan and leaving all these stained articles of clothing and skin, they still do eventually wash off, showing that even the actions that usually don't seem like they can be forgiven and washed off just like the stain of the pomegranates. Text to self, text to text, and text to world. For text to self, I can connect to Hassan because even if someone betrays me, I still may have that person's best interest at heart, just like Hassan does. I can also connect Amir to Othello because both characters can be cruel at times, but neither character seems like they truly want to be cruel. They only act out of cruelty whenever it seems like they're pushed towards that brink. I can connect Amir not appreciating Hassan when he had him to America, not appreciating presidents' views while the president is still in office. An example of that would be a lot of people, whenever Donald Trump was elected, wish that they had other presidents back and kind of appreciated those presidents. That's kind of what I view it as in the world. But this is important because you can understand that this is important because if you can understand the text and relate it to real life, you can write better about it and present better evidence towards it. The setting of the story is primarily set inside Afghanistan, but also in America. America is different from Afghanistan because there is an idea of new opportunities in America, also with a different type of government and economic system. The setting played a role in the story due to how important power is in Afghanistan, and the importance of not committing sins as well. Lastly, the social class Lastly, the impact social class has is more important in Afghanistan. The novel takes place over the span of at least 2 decades, but a huge factor in one of the periods of time is the Taliban and the fighting they brought. In one of the chapters, I believe it is Rahim Khan, clearly states that he was happy when the Taliban won just because of all the fighting that was brought. Eventually, he didn't feel the same way about being happy they won, although. My favorite quotations in the book include, "For you, 1,000 times over, what would you do if I hit you with this? And there is only one sin, and that is theft." "For you, 1,000 times over" is one of my favorites because it emphasizes how much Amir cares for Sarab and Hassan's legacy. If you don't truly care for somebody, then you wouldn't be able to do something 1,000 times for them and still not feel some type of way about it. For example, if you really loved your dog, or if you really loved your parents, and they gave you everything you wanted, and you could tell them, for you, 1,000 times over, I'll do whatever you need me to do. What would you do if I hit you with this? Is what Amir exclaimed whenever he was picking up and tossing the pomegranate up in the air. This is usually a question that can be viewed as playful, but when Amir threatens this to Hassan, Hassan is shaken to the core, and it's kind of a powerful scene whenever I read it. When Baba says there is only one sin, and that is theft, Baba kinda has a point with this idea and considers just about every single sin involves theft of something, and I can agree with this, which makes it one of my favorites. My unique discoveries were author Khalid says this book is loosely based on a true story. He grew up in Afghanistan. Despite 9/11 being thought of to mine, let me rephrase that. Despite 9/11 being a thought that usually comes to mind very quickly at the mention of Afghanistan, the event and prejudice behind the event are hardly ever mentioned in the book. Just like Amir in the novel, Khalid said that he felt like a tourist in Afghanistan upon going back there in 2001, which I believe was his first time going back there in a while, after he moved and went to college in America. But overall, I really did enjoy this book, and I would recommend anyone who hasn't read it to give it a read. The themes of loyalty and redemption are two of my favorites in the book, and a lot can be learned from the ideas that are presented, especially the ideas brought to mind whenever you think of Hassan. One of my only problems was with the ending. I'm not asking for every single detail to be wound up in a nice bow and explained, but there were far too many unanswered questions at the end of the book for my taste. If there was a second book detailing the story after the ending, I would definitely read. Important info or phrases from the lit crits that you can use on a Q3 essay would be from one of the stories with the theme of social class and Kite Runner and the Marxist perspective. It talks about relationship between the runner and the flyer. The flyer is literally and figuratively viewed as above the runner. The flyer is often the higher class individual. The analysis will be helpful with any prompt that asks to evaluate the use of class structure in life in Afghanistan culture. Also, if it is about the difference between the importance in class in their culture versus American culture. In the lit crit about guilt, it talks about Baba being a hypocrite. Baba tells Amir that there is only one sin, theft, adding, "I spit on such a man," while talking about this. Baba, however, committed that sin. For him to talk so lowly of a man that commits the sin when he is that man is hypocritical. However, him committing that sin leads him to try and redeem himself by opening up an orphanage. The guilt he felt caused him to help others, and I could use this in a prompt asking how guilt can lead to redemption.